John Donne was born in London in 1572 in a wealthy Catholic family, even if quite soon he converted to the Anglicanism. 1598, he managed to become secretary of a very important person, that was Sir Thomas Egerton, that gave him the possibility to attend to a very important career. But in 1601, he had a secret marriage to a certain 17-year-old Anne that was Sir Egerton's niece, and this brought him a bit of problems, and he was dismissed from his job. In 1611, he went on a diplomatic mission to France and other countries, as he was in relationship to certain important people of the time. And it is in this period, and in particular in 1607, that he wrote his divine poems. It is the period of King James I, and King James I was very interested in the capacities of John Donne, and in fact he appreciated his religious characteristics. He appreciated him as a religious thinker and a preacher, and in fact he urged him to become a priest, to take the holy orders in the Anglican Church, which he did in the year 1615. His wife died in 1617, and he wrote in 1618 his holy sonnets. And it's from this moment onwards that he became more a thinker, a religious thinker, and a preacher devoted to his role as the Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral in London, where he was buried in 1631. We can say that in John Donne we find two sides of his character and of his role as a writer. He was the soldier, he was the lover, he was the drinker, he was the writer of passionate love poems. But he was also a great preacher of sermons, the devotedest of men. So these two extremes are present through all his life. On one side, the passionate lover, but always analytic. On the other side, the divine writer, but approached God with passion. And these opposites are always present in his verse. So his thought is always mixed up with his emotions and the sensations that he brought up. For example, we sometimes have some violent expressions that startle the reader right from the beginning, for example, of one of his love poems, when he starts, "For God's sake, hold your tongue and let me love." But he is aware of the physical body and of its mystical potential, and we see it through his writings. He is aware of his capacity for raptures of love, for love and sanctity. Some of the most important images that we find through his works is that of death, that sometimes or often connected with the idea of darkness and of illness. We may say that John Donne is surely one of the most important literary innovators of his time, and for certain the most important and remarkable representative of what we call the metaphysical poetry. Metaphysical poetry is most of all concerned with the fundamental problems of the nature of the universe and of man's function or place in life. So we can say that the term is concerned with reflection on the intellectual and physical crisis of the age in which John Donne was living. And another important aspect is this transition from the Renaissance period to the modern age. It's a very important moment in the life of English literature. And John Donne surely was one of its most important representatives. His collection of songs and sonnets rely on something that we generally call conceits. A conceit is nothing else than an extended metaphor in which different situations, even very different one from another, are compared. So his ability in mixing, for example, irony, philosophical inquiry, deep meditation on life and death makes him surely one of the most important representatives of his age, and in particular of metaphysical poetry. Just to give an idea of how high his poetical level is and how contrastive sometimes are these conceits that we were talking about. If we consider just the beginning, the 4 lines of Go and Catch a Falling Star, you can quite understand the referring poise that he has in each line that we have. For example, Go and Catch a Falling Star surely has to refer to astronomy, while Tell Me Where All Past Years Are, the role of memory and time. Or Who Cleft the Devil's Foot? Surely this has to do with superstition. And finally, Teach Me to Hear Mermaids Singing, something to do with mythology. Again, Go and Catch a Falling Star, Tell Me Where All Past Years Are. Or Who Cleft the Devil's Foot? Teach me to hear mermaids singing. As you can see, these lines are always startling in themselves. They're always inspirating. They're always curiously modern. Other features that we may point out in his writings are his intense dramatic quality and the variety of tone and register that we have through all his works. The power of some of his sonnets tend to give us an idea how intense his feelings were towards the things that he spoke about. For example, if we have a look at the few lines, just a few lines of Batter My Heart, you can quite understand also his relationship to God. It is a very powerful holy sonnet. It tends to point out his particular relationship and his love of God, together with always mixing up original images that gives more power to using these contrastive elements. For example, when he says, Batter my heart, 3-personed God, for you are yet but knock, breath, shine, and seek to mends. That I may rise and stand, overthrow me, and bend your force, to break, blow, burn and make me new. So he uses some, even this alliterative last verse in some way gives us the idea of how strong he tends to refer to his relationship to God. But as we know, John Donne is not only famous for his writings in poetical form, but also his prose writings have had a very important role in the considerations that he has done, always on the theme of man and the world, the relationship between man and man, as we said, between man and God, between the idea and the theme of death that we have seen before, the desire for this ultimate union of himself with God. So also this eschatologic design that we tend to see in his idea of life in relationship to God. Always, naturally, even in his prose, we always find this these emotional expressions that in some way gives more importance and highlights the rapture that he has towards the features and the topics that he tends to point out also in his prose. For example, through his intellectual searches, we also see certain lines that have become so famous. For example, we have heard "For whom the bell tolls," that even Ernest Hemingway has taken to be part of the title of one of his important works. But not only this, when we hear lines like "No man is an island, entire in itself," "Every man is a piece of the continent," "Any man's death diminishes me because I am involved in humanity." That's the greatness of John Donne.